In this lesson, we're going to learn how to use information from multiple plans to draw one section. Now, we know that our section has been started underneath the ground floor. And once we get to a point where we want to start drawing information from the top, we run into the issue that the information is sitting way up here and we can't draw those vertical construction lines down anymore. So there are a few things that you could do. One, you could take your entire upper level plan and you could move it so that it lines up vertically with this plan. You could also take your entire section and move it using your base point to sit underneath your upper level. But all of these ideas, while they could work, they have one flaw, and that is that you're actually moving your main drawing. Now, as a rule of thumb, I like to always create these temporary drawings that I use as reference, and then I go and delete them. The beauty of this is that you are only moving or creating things that you are going to be using temporarily. The rule of thumb, therefore, is that whatever is going to be a final drawing stays in one place. That means I'm not going to move the plan, I'm not going to move the upper plan, and I'm not going to move the elevation or this section. Those are going to stay put forever, and I'm only going to be moving temporary information around it from different directions so that I can use it as a reference. So that is a nice tip that you can use, and the way that I learned that the hard way is that if you start turning or locking your layers on and off, you basically will start moving things around and you'll leave some layers behind inevitably, and then you will never know exactly where those layers are supposed to be placed and how they are supposed to be aligned, and basically everything starts to fall apart if you do that. So let's follow that rule now, and we are going to make a copy of this upper level, and we're going to do exactly what we did earlier by shifting it, using it as a reference. So I've made a copy now. I'm going to delete all of the information that I don't need, all of those section lines, or those grid lines rather, and I'm going to use this line as a trimming line. Then I'm going to find out more or less where I can place it so that I have some space. I'm going to move it slightly higher, and then I'm going to move it using the base point as the main distance between the two. So I know that right now these two are perfectly aligned because those base points were used as that common point. I'm just going to draw a rectangle around this one so that I know exactly that it is different and not confuse it with the level that is below. So now I remember that upper level is here, lower level is here, and I will temporarily use these two as my reference. So let's jump right into that. First, I'm going to take these two walls and I'm just going to copy them down instead of drawing construction lines, and I'm going to copy them down to there. So they're already in the right place. Then I'm going to have a look at the height of the slab, so that's 6.25. And I'm going to figure out where 6.25 is. I'm going to use my zero datum since it is easier. I don't have to do any mathematics by subtracting these figures. So I'm going to offset that by 6.25. So that is the top of the slab on the upper level. Now what I can do is I can choose what, or at least not choose, but work out what thickness the slab should be. Most of those thicknesses are going to be derived from the actual spans that the slabs are doing, whether you have beams underneath, and all of that will be mainly engineering driven. So for our case, I'm going to assume that we have a 250 slab that is supported on 300 millimeter deep beams. I don't know if that is overkill. I'm just basically pulling that out of my head as quite a standard size that will most likely get across that 6 meter or 6.5 meter span. So let's go ahead and copy the slab upwards. The slab, if I believe, was 200. So we can actually leave it at 200, why not? Rather have a thinner slab, and then let's offset a 300 millimeter beam below that. I could actually go and have a look at more technical documentation to see whether I can't get a slab running across without having any beams below it, which means that I would just have a pure thicker slab that would handle all of that. So I can see in a later design revision if I want to actually add a ceiling that conceals all of this, or if I want to have an exposed slab. So for now I'm going to leave that beam in there until I do a little bit more design development or research on that. So I'm going to use the edge of this wall to trim that. and this wall actually will run down, and basically it will start where that garage adjoins into the living or dining area. So the height of the roof for the garage doesn't really have to be too high, but I don't want to make it lower than the slab so that I don't actually see this bulkhead happening here. So what I will do is I will say that the roof is going to start at this level, and it's going to slope down slightly, and it's going to be hidden by a slab in this location. So I'm going to draw that wall in place. And this door is going to be underneath, and there will be a tip-up door of some kind that is going to be basically pulled in underneath here. So all of this is really rough what I'm doing right now. This roof would probably need much more space to work in so that you could have enough structure, so that you could have the entire mechanism that lifts up the roof. This would most likely end up being higher, that wall. So now I'm just stretching the wall higher, and here we would have some sort of a gutter system internally so that we don't see any roof protruding. So quite a modern approach to that roof detailing. So already I've included a tiny idea that there is a gutter happening. This could also be a completely flat roof with a little bit of gravel, so that is something that we can also think about, whether it is the slab just continuing all the way across. It may actually be the simplest method to go and do. So again, something that we can go and revise, or something that I will have a look at independently. So the beauty about all of this that is actually happening is that a lot of the design decisions are making on the fly during the lessons, and you can actually see and be part of some of those design processes that actually do happen. So now what I'd like to copy, I'm going to be working from both levels. I'm going to start looking at the columns that are happening in these areas, and I can start drawing the horizontal, or the vertical lines that are basically coming out of those columns. So these are all going to be gray lines. I'm going to match properties with that, and I can go and copy that to this side. I can see that it aligns with that column, and I can start looking upstairs, and I can do the same thing with the windows. So I like the part where I can copy the window, and basically, since the window frame wraps all the way around from sides and top and bottom, the plan view will look quite similar to the section view. Obviously there will be exceptions to that rule, but basically a lot of things you can quite easily copy and get away with, at least if it's a starting point to get your design off the ground and rolling quickly. So what I'm going to do is, next I'm going to have a look at any other major elements that I need to focus on. So we already have this glazing facade in place. We're going to have this frame coming down at the bottom. There's going to be a planter there, so I need to factor in that there will be a planter happening here. So it could be that this wall is actually going to be a little bit of an upstand, so that we can get at least a 400-500 millimeter planting bed in place. So I can factor that in. Let's say 500 millimeters. I will now drop that frame onto it, stretch this window frame down, and the next thing I want to do is to determine the roof height. Now, we haven't actually gone and drawn a roof plan yet, so it could all just be decided and designed in the section. So we could basically go in right now and say that we want to have a 3 meter floor to ceiling height. So that is our 3 meter offset, and then from there on we can start to factor in the same things that we have going on here where we have a roof thickness. So I'm going to say, let's say we have a 300 slab, and we're just going to have a raw concrete finish underneath that. I again could go and change it, but basically what I'm showing you are the offsets that you're making and the way that you start designing your space through your section, which means that you can then take information from the section, for example this information here, and you can then carry it across to your original plan and start to draw in those lines. So therefore what happens is that you start working in between your plans, in between your sections and your elevation, and everything starts to work as a whole as you evolve your design decisions. Since there are design decisions that can only be made when looking at a section. So don't think that you're going to solve the plan 100% and then make the section exactly according to the plan. Everything's going to change as you evolve your designs.